universe is calling you. The universe is calling me. It speaks both day and night. It's full of dark and light.
Hello, everybody. Hey, it's Mark D'Antonio here with Tara Diulis and an earthquake happening here for the moment. Tara's right there. Hi, Tara.
Hello.
And
Hi.
down below, we have Daryl Mason. Hi, Daryl.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Tara.
Hi,
And,
Daryl.
and welcome, everybody, to Sky Tour Radio. This is day, October 2nd. October. I'm wearing the sweatshirt.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, I know.
It's cold.
Jeez. I just want to say, we've been having a great time with everything we're doing. Thank you, Terry. We're all bouncing up and down, right? Except Daryl's not, because he's not showing
That's
us.
why I
what
do it too.
Yeah.
I have a good face for radio, Mark.
Actually, I was going to say that Daryl's actually just an artificial intelligence, and Daryl stands for something. It's the DARRELL. There's an acronym there.
It's from Krypton, Darrell.
Oh, Darrell. There you go. That's true.
That's
Well,
good.
everybody, welcome. Tonight is going to be a fun night. We're going to talk about the recent DART mission, the dual asteroid redirection test that they just accomplished, and it actually worked. They actually struck the asteroid, as we'll see, and the results are not in yet because they have to look at the orbit of the asteroid. There were two asteroids going around each other, but you'll see that in a minute. But before we start, I just wanted to say welcome and say, look, if you have watched Sky Tour Radio before and you watched our Sky Tour live stream, you'll notice that Sky Tour Radio is the companion to Sky Tour live stream. We talk about things that we do in Sky Tour live stream here in Sky Tour Radio. Okay. And we spend a lot of time actually showing different objects and things that we've done in Sky Tour. Now, one of the things that you can do, one of the things that's interesting is if you spend some time with us, you'll notice that, Daryl is usually the guy right there. He's usually the guy that's with us in all of our streams. And he's I call him the astronomer's astronomer, which he doesn't really like that term. I don't know what you want me to call you, Daryl, but, he's good.
Old fart.
We'll skip that one too. But he knows his way around the sky. I know my way around objects and what they are. So, I'm an astronomer by degree. Daryl's an astronomer through a life pursuit. And, there's value to both sides of that. And so together we, I think, give a rounded out view of astronomy. As you'll see in today's deep dive, he's going to do exactly that for all of you. Now, one of the things that we want to do in general, what we're going to do actually is we're going to take you through some of the benefits of visiting with us at Sky Tour Livestream. What is Sky Tour Livestream? Well, we have a desert observatory out in Arizona in the desert, and we have an observatory here on the East Coast that's currently being rehabbed. You can see the telescope right there behind me. That right there, that's our East Coast Observatory. And it's actually being rehabbed, and because of that, we're going to be able to bring you a far better, view. I mean, just turn on a little bit of the light so you can see it better. So there is that telescope here, and it's got another telescope mounted on top of it, right? And so that is our East Coast system that's going to go into the new building once the new building is built. COVID hit, and we couldn't build a new building because wood prices went up like no tomorrow. I mean, to build a small observatory building was going to cost us as much as building a gigantic garage. And I thought, Not going to do it. I'd rather build a much larger garage size thing when the prices come back to normal. All right. So that's that. Now, the other thing too is that we've done a companion website to there it is right there. This is the companion website to SkyTour Livestream. This is called SkyTour Livestream Observatory's portal. This is a portal to everything we do. And if you come in, you can see that there's you have home, SkyTour Livestream, About Us, Contact Us, and SkyTour Radio. It takes you to all the links to everything you want to do. Now, if you scroll down in here, well, you'll see that it says, hey, I want cool pictures. And it tells you what to do. It brings you to the online database. So if we were to do that, basically the online database looks like this. Okay. We have all these folders and you go, what the heck am I looking at? Well, they're organized by date. This says 2022, 9/17. You click in there and now you see all these objects we took pictures of, like the Heart Nebula. All right. And we click on the Heart Nebula and then you click in here and down. This is the one where the images are processed. Now, yes, I have you doing it because this is all free. So you have to do some work too. But here's our Heart Nebula. Okay. This is a 20-second shot from our desert observatory. I mean, you can't beat the location and the capability of what we've got going for us right now. So, and that comes from our portal site. So if you want cool pictures, they'll take you there. Now, if you want to get photographic prints, well, that's a whole nother measure that we've included. This is our gallery of online prints that you can get up to 32 by 48 inches long. Okay, this is the big photos now that we have offering. And I've been slowly converting these all to mega-sized objects, and you can get them. And they're very cheap comparatively. So here's a Heart Nebula we did as well. And the image will show up, but you can get 30 by 40 in this. All right. And you can do it on paper. You can do it on metal. You can do it on framed canvas. You can do it on regular canvas. And you can have it framed under glass if you want. So there's a lot of options for you. All right. So that's the one. And that's a really pretty image. So, and it has the STLS logo right there. So you can always remember where it came from. So there we go. So this is beautiful. This is what SkyTour is all about. And we also have a photo gallery if you just want to go sifting through some of the imagery. All right. And check out some of our greatest hits, which are also available up in the gallery. Right. And you can learn about us. You can get some ideas about what we do. It's a very simple site, but it's a portal to take you straight to everything SkyTour. Now, there's something else that we've just done too. We have been observing for a number of years. And in the last year, we did the final adjustments to the telescope to get images, as you've seen, just beautiful images. And so that said, what we've done is we've created a database. This is a database of every single image we've ever captured in SkyTour Livestream, every single one. And actually, every single one from the last December or November, actually. So it's a year, a year to date, actually, pretty close, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's the object. You know what it is. It's an emission nebula, reflection nebula. You can see how long the exposures were, what the settings on the camera were, how many were stacking up. And there's special comments over here, and every constellation they're in, and alternate names. And everything is going to be searchable. All right. Right now, for instance, we have these around here. These are just our tests. We have a query by type. Okay. So up here, in here, and you're not going to do this. It's going to be a very pretty interface for you guys. But let's say you want to look for every emission nebula we took a picture of. Well, then you put in EN, and you'll just select the button that you want for that. And then if we hit that, boom, all the emission nebulae we've taken pictures of show up in here, along with the comments and so forth. So you can see that they're beautiful, and they're going to be mixed with all their images too. So you'll be able to click on the images and go see all the images. So there's a lot that we're doing to make the SkyTour Livestream experience way more beneficial. Okay, so and this is going to be cool. Like, for instance, LDN 1622. We're putting in the images slowly, but like if we click on this link, right, and then what comes up is an image of LDN 1622, right? And there is the image. That's the image right out of the camera that's up on the database. So it's really cool to be able to do that kind of thing. And so and Daryl, that's the boogeyman, of course, right?
I was going to say.
Bet, yeah. And of course, when we process it even more, we get rid of things like this mottled noise in here. We can remove all that and make the images look just startling, and that's what we do. So that's what that's about. So that's our amazing process that we're moving forward with, and so hopefully you guys will be able to enjoy SkyTour Livestream in a whole new set of ways. Um, Speaking of SkyTour Livestream, I did want to mention that we do have a little bit of a maintenance issue going on right now. All right. And I would like to share some of that with you. And to do that, we're going to bring this back. Okay. That's a turkey vulture flying out toward the observatory. And the reason was, in fact, there were lots of them. That's not a UFO you see right there. That's actually a reflection in the automobile window. And that was your truck, I believe, Tara, was it not?
It was. And there were probably at least 50 to 60 of those flying around. It was magnificent. I've never seen anything like it. It was magnificent.
Yeah.
Looked kind of foreboding to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I would have caught one.
A foreboding
cool.
of a dead telescope, right?
Yes, okay. It was foreboding.
Yeah, as they went out there, they discovered that we did some diagnostic things because the telescope had failed a couple previous nights. And we're getting close to our yearly maintenance on the telescope anyway. So they went out there. We tried to fix it. Didn't work. And these turkey vultures were saying, come on, give it up. I want to eat some of this. And, of course, Tara said no.
They're huge.
They're huge. They got like 5-foot wingspans easily. And so they're pretty. And so now this is Marianne on the right and Tara on the left working on the telescope, trying to get it working. We discovered a frayed power cable, which we are replacing, by the way, just to let everybody know.
Not good.
Nope. And I'm glad they took pictures of it. But look at Tara and Mariana are so diligent. They go out there and just work like crazy to get everything done correctly, you know.
I think
And
you owe somebody 2 or 3 steak dinners.
That's it? Boy, that's easy.
I'll take a nap.
Yeah, right? So anyway, they were diligent about trying to get this to work, and so we couldn't get it to work. So we ended up having to have it carted away, and they took it away, and there's Tara in front of her artwork, her door, okay, which I can't. It's a small image. That's Tara's husband who was assisting us in boxing up the telescope and getting it out of the building. And they actually took it down to Tucson, Arizona. It was like a 2.5-hour ride, if I recall.
It was about a 13-hour day when it ended up.
Yeah.
Opposite directions of the state, but it was fun. It was worth it.
Yeah, and let's just hope we don't have to do this too many times. Now you can't. This is a picture of all three of us, but you can't see me because I'm on the screen here, and you couldn't see it in the sunlight. But there's Marianne, there's Tara, and there's me.
And Dale's in the mirror in the reflection of the window.
There he is. He's taking a picture. Yeah. So there we go. So that was what we did. Now, one of the neat things about this trip, and this is at Star Arizona down in Tucson, and Marianne I felt like Max Headroom, if you ever saw that show, because I was a face on the screen going, hello, guys. Ha! You know. And this is Dean Koenig from Star Arizona, the owner. This is David, who actually is the Meade technical guy. And they took this apart right then and there on the spot to start looking at the maintenance issues so we can actually fix it on the spot. And so David looked in there.
He tried.
Well, yeah, but obviously he wasn't sure what was wrong with it. And so he has to diagnose the circuit boards, and that's what's going to happen this coming week. So the telescope stopped moving. That's what happened. And, the telescope doesn't report any errors, but it didn't move. So that's an issue. Yeah. And for those eagle eyes of you, you might notice telescopes in the background. Well, those telescopes in the background, one of those telescopes that you have already seen, and this is the best shot, one of those telescopes is going to be the second telescope in the dome, or the building rather, for SkyTour Livestream, along with this one down here. So I won't tell you which.
Wow.
I won't tell you which one.
I want to know.
You can't. Inquiring
Okay.
minds want to know. Yeah, but it's going to be a higher focal length device and instrument that's going to allow us to show very, very close up magnified views of objects with in concert with the wide field view of the other telescope. So that's going to be just fantastic. And here's Max Headroom on the screen here talking to Dean to get information on what's going wrong with this system. So they actually tried to fix it, get it up there and going. This is our system with the way it came in, because we have this additional lens and then the camera on top. And they did their best. Again, Max Headroom watching the action. Miriam was a trooper. Anyway, so that's what happened there. That was actually kind of a fun day. But I did want to mention this was one of the guys inside the building when we got there. Well, they got there. This is a tarantula.
No, it's a Ask Marianne. That's what she calls them.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah,
give
that's
him
true.
a name.
Well, I want to, because
Mascot.
yeah, I want to
He's
call it maybe.
beautiful.
I want to say Terra because that's in the name tarantula, but we got one of those right
Tarantula.
here. So maybe Terran or Tehran. Well, no, that's the capital of Iran. No. Well, anyway, yeah. Tarantula? No, that's a dance, isn't it? So
My
as you can
license
see,
plate.
yeah, right. Yeah, Terra Mater. That was you, I think.
Oh boy.
Look at that. Isn't that beautiful?
We just had the annual tarantula migration here in Colorado.
Oh, you did. You told me about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the little boy tarantulas go looking for a girlfriend tarantulas, and they walk all over southeast Colorado.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing, and definitely nothing I ever want to do.
I'd be tiptoeing.
I think you probably should. Yeah. So there you go. That's the update on SkyTour West right now, and thanks to that one right there and Marianne, this system has made it safely down to Tucson for our yearly maintenance servicing. Just a little earlier than we expected.
Yeah.
So now tonight on SkyTour, I think one of the things that I want to do, is discuss the famous impact that just occurred on this asteroid, and it was called DART. Now, DART was a history maker. Now, I will tell you why it's not the first. There was a probe called Deep Impact, which actually occurred before DART, and that impacted, I think it was Comet Tempel, wasn't it? And they actually saw this spray of material coming off. But this DART stands for Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or Dual Asteroid Redirection Test, DART. It was actually launched by a Falcon 9. Okay, this is the DART mission profile in an image, right? That's actually the DART spacecraft that you see there on the left. And that little thing to the left of the DART spacecraft is actually a CubeSat that came off earlier in the mission to, at least that's my interpretation of it, to photograph the actual impact. And we're going to see what that little CubeSat saw.
It's called the Lycia Cube.
Yeah, we got
It's Italian.
Yeah. And we'll talk about what Lycia means and everything. So now, the DART spacecraft was buttoned up in a fairing. This is the fairing you see here, left and right sides of the fairing, and the DART spacecraft in between. Those fairings are going to close in equal distances from left and right and seal up this satellite inside the fairing. And then it's going to be, once it's in the fairing, it's going to then be, sent up to space. But one of the things to talk about is this fairing. Okay, that's the sealed fairing right there. Okay, this sealed up fairing is also holding something else along with the satellite we see there. And if you look right, you see that like silver object, the silver cylinder at the top. Just below that, you see all that gold foil. And then to the left, on the left side, you see that angular, like an angular piece. Well, I can show you a better picture of it. Here it is. Here it is without the foil attached. Okay, in between the two guys, you see that square box that's at an angle. That's the Lycia CubeSat attached to the satellite, right? That's attached to the DART main body, and the CubeSat is going to be ejected once it gets about a week away from close approach. And that's exactly what happened. And the CubeSat looks like this. Excuse me. Um, this is the inner structure. It's being slid down into its casement prior to being attached to the spacecraft like this. Okay. Now, Lycia, Licia, stands for Light Italian CubeSat for Imaging of Asteroids, and the Italian team made it, of course, as you can guess, and it did manage to get some gorgeous imagery for sure. Now, uh, the the Falcon 9 that launched the whole DART mission carried aloft not just Lycia and not just the DART, but along with the DART, there was a special camera, all right, called Draco, all right, Draco. Now, Draco is also the name of a constellation, but not to be confused with that. Draco stands for Didymos Reconnaissance and Asteroid Camera for Optical Navigation. Yeah, astronomers, we love acronyms, right? Well, the designers, Didymos is the name of the binary asteroid that they went to, okay? And the binary asteroid reconnaissance is being done by this camera, and the camera is the thing that we actually streamed live in SkyTour live stream. And everybody who attached and watched us, I guess over 1,000 people were watching us at some point. They saw the asteroid getting closer and closer and closer, and then you see that it's actually two asteroids, and then even closer, we passed the big one, which is Didymos, and we end up going past it to Dimorphos, which is the smaller one that's orbiting. Now, just for a scale comparison, Didymos on the right there, it's 780 meters across, which is about 2,600 feet or just under a half mile. Okay, we didn't target that. We targeted Dimorphos, which you can see over to the left, right, which is more akin to the size of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Okay, but Dimorphos was 163 meters across, and that's more akin to 535 feet or a tenth of a mile in size. And that's actually the small guy that was targeted with this system. You can see the scales relative to things. So, like if you put if Dimorphos crashed into New York, it's coming in. It's like about the size of the Statue of Liberty, a little bigger. This image is not really doing it justice. Okay, and it's almost the size of the Pyramid of Giza in terms of size. They're equivalent in a sense. And then you take them and imagine those coming in at I don't know, say several thousand kilometers per second. Okay, and you can imagine the amazing damage that would occur, and it would be quite disastrous, in fact. Now, the fairing that was holding all this got it safely up to space on the top of the Falcon 9, and then once it got there, it spent the next 10 months traveling to the asteroid pair. And that's where this started coming in. Now, this is the Draco camera live. And when we started streaming it, you could see I'm pointing to actually Didymos right now, and you can actually see Dimorphos to its upper right. Now, as the asteroid got closer, okay, all right, now you can see Didymos is starting to show some detail on it, okay? Now, you might ask, how fast was this thing going? How fast was this probe going? Well, the impact speed when the DART mission struck Dimorphos was about 6.5 kilometers per second. Okay, per second. That's
Wow.
That's 4 miles a second. Okay, and it made a huge splash. It really did. So uh, as it got closer and closer, we saw more and more detail. And there's something strange about this asteroid that you have to notice, right? As it got closer, it's it's not looking smooth, is it? No, it's not.
It's a rubble pile.
Yeah, and when it gets really close, you'll notice that you find out that this object, this is the last thing that was seen before we saw this. Now, the way it comes in, the data comes in by lines, okay? So obviously one line of data came in and then the camera struck the asteroid at high speed at 4 miles per second. Not much left. Not much left. Okay. So what happened was that with that strike, a huge splash occurred. It made a big splash. Now, we mentioned that Dimorphos, Daryl just said it, Dimorphos was somewhat of a rubble pile. Well, that's true. Okay. If you look, you see everywhere you look, you see rock and little pebbles. It's like there's no soily surface, right? That's something that's we're going to talk about in a little bit. That's because uh, when there's a lot of rubble out in space, a lot of small particles, sometimes they might be attracted to each other from gravity. And once one become 10 or 15 or 20 or 15,000 little pieces, that becomes a gravitational center, a gravitational concentration. And out in the depths of space, that would tend to attract more little particles to it as it orbited and other particles drifted near that gravitational well, so to speak, the gravitational force center. And so over time, these little tiny piles of rubble build into gigantic piles of rubble. This one is about a tenth of a mile in diameter of rubble. Now, um, I have a feeling that when we find out what the overall goal was, which was to move this orbit of this satellite, to make this tiny asteroid orbit the bigger asteroid slightly differently, because we hit it opposite of the direction its motion was. So that means that if anything, we should have slowed it down a little bit. And what that would do is make it go a little bit closer to Didymus. And if it went closer to Didymus, then we have succeeded in moving an asteroid with an impactor. This is how we can save the Earth in the future. If there's an asteroid way out there that's a problem asteroid, hitting it with a large impactor could move it enough to make it a safe trajectory past the Earth and put it into a better orbit. And that's exactly what this was designed to do.
You
Okay.
know, I have seen discussion in the past of like the Armageddon scenario you're talking about. You know, you're going to go up and blast an asteroid. Uh, they talk different about Dimorphos here than I have heard about rubble piles in the past. Concern being that if they hit a rubble pile, it would still hit Earth, but it would be like a shotgun blast, you know, a bunch of smaller
Yeah.
impacts instead of one
Yep.
big one. And they talk like that was a bad thing. But during this recent mission, they talk like that would be a good thing. I could kind of see the argument either way, and that it's the old saying about with shotguns, you know, bird shot is for birds. I'd much rather get shot by bird shot than I would with a 12 gauge slug.
Right.
Uh, you know, and I think something was said too. You're probably going to show pictures of this post impact when you see the ejecta pattern.
Yeah.
That actually had a thrust of its own. Uh, you know, counter the direction, as you said, of Dimorphos's orbit around Didymos. Uh, that in effect it was like a great big rocket blast on the side. That could also, I guess, hopefully their idea was that it would slow down Dimorphos.
Yeah. And my feeling, I actually have a thought process. And they said, well, this stuff coming off will as it leaves, it's going to have this impulsive force that's going to basically push back as it leaves the asteroid. But you only have a certain amount of energy of this striking projectile. And once it strikes, okay, that's it. the only energy that's going to move that asteroid is from that initial strike. There's no additional energy that's going to be created, no additional thrust that's going to be created. So I'm guessing that hitting a rock solid asteroid with a projectile, okay, like the DART probe, the same size, and hitting a rubble pile is going to produce two very different results. I'm thinking that the rubble pile result would be less efficient, and because when you actually see what these actually do, okay, for example, this is the Hubble Space Telescope view, 22 minutes after on the left. Okay, that spread out stuff, that's actually rubble spraying out. But notice it's going in all directions, right? Now, we're only seeing this in 2D. We're not seeing it in 3D. But most of this stuff is going out either into the page and spreading or coming out of the page and spreading, depending on which direction it was facing Hubble. All right. But after 5 hours, you see that stuff's out there. And then after 8.5 hours, 8.2, it's a little further out. I think that when you have a rubble pile asteroid and you strike it to move it, a lot of the energy of impact is lost because you've got a lot of rubble that is going to displace and and spread the force of impact through these particles, and then they're going to go out to the sides. You're going to go back in the same direction that it came from, and they're going to go ahead. And the parts that go ahead are going to work for you. The parts to the sides have no effect, and the parts going back will have a negative effect. You know,
Yeah, but they're all robbing momentum from the main body of Dimorphos.
yeah. And you compare the impact though of a solid object being hit by a solid impactor, okay, like two billiard balls being hit, okay. When you strike those, okay, several things happen. You know, when a large object strikes a solid object, much of that gets transmitted through the object, right? And just like a croquet ball, like a pool ball, okay. But these these most of that energy is a clean energy transfer, because when you shoot a pool ball, you can actually hit another ball such that the ball that's rolling toward it comes to a dead stop, and the ball that was hit goes out in extremely fast speed. That's a very efficient impact and a very efficient collision.
Yes.
But when you talk about a rubble pile, that's like saying have a bunch of saltwater taffies all wrapped in paper sitting on the pool table and striking it with a pool ball, um, albeit a fast one. What's going to happen? Are they going to go where you expect them to? Some are going to get translated backwards, even from the other motion, from other collisions with other particles leaving the asteroid surface. I think it's going to be found to be a less efficient collision with less of a result that they expected. Um,
That makes sense. You
that's
know
just a thought.
the billiards analogy. You have to give them credit. That was a heck of a shot. I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
the asteroid was what 6 million miles away,
Yeah, a little
and
more, actually.
they managed to hit within 17 meters of the center target point of the asteroid
Yeah, that's
from
exactly what I've got.
6 million plus miles away.
Yep, that's right. You know, so it was actually impacted 10 months and 1 day later on September 26, 2021, or 2022, rather. And the impact point, as Daryl just said, was only 55 feet, 17 meters, off of the asteroid's center. That's not bad for a 10.8 million kilometer distance. Now, as Daryl said, that's a 6.7 million mile distance. That's incredible, right? Now, we also, okay, if you see these three objects, here's these three frames animated. Okay, so here's the Hubble animation showing the 5 hours, or sorry, 22 minutes, 5 hours, and 8 hour time frames. So you can see the differences. The thing to notice is how bright it is. Okay, you're seeing this material now reflecting a lot more sunlight because it's been spread into the area around this asteroid, this tiny little asteroid. Okay, now the James Webb Space Telescope was no stranger, and it took this image. Okay, the Hubble's on the left, and the James Webb's on the right. Okay, and you can see that the James Webb also shows this spray as well. Now, I've heard everything from people, and I'll just show you the animation of that. Okay, this is the animation of the James Webb impact. Okay, I've heard people say to me, we should leave well enough alone. Like, what if there was some kind of life there? Or what if this? What if that? Um, I think we're pretty. I think it's pretty clear that there's not going to be any form of life like ours that's going to exist on a barren asteroid in a vacuum of space where all it's had is ultraviolet radiation for billions of years impacting it. So I'm not worried about life being there. And as far as people who have said to me, well, that kind of like violates the prime directive, like Star Trek. Like, no, no, it's a matter like what's going to happen when we go to mine asteroids? Is that going to violate a prime directive of sorts? I say no. I think we're going to be able to do that, and we should.
Yeah.
But going to Europa is a different story. Europa could have life, as we might understand
Yes.
life.
Yeah. Well, the tree huggers always got to get their 2 cents in.
Well, I don't characterize them like that. I just say people that think differently, and I respect their opinions actually. And it is important that we don't get too obsessed with just ripping things in our solar system apart. But this mission was specifically to protect the human race. That's what this was all about. That's what this is all about.
I wonder in the Webb image, since it is an infrared telescope and infrared is basically heat, how
Yeah.
much of what we're looking at in that Webb image is a reflection of the energy released as infrared from Dimorphos?
Well, I'd have to know the you have to understand. I think we'd have to understand the frequency that we're seeing in this image here on the right. I don't know the frequency of the image infrared spectrum that was taken. I don't know what that was because heat, is got a range in the infrared, and it doesn't go all the way to the very very far infrared. So I don't know what this was showing us here. And so I did not look at that. I just thought that it was cool that telescopes all over the planet were trained on this for those that could see it because it was daytime
Oh
here, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
I was India, like the Indian Ocean was dark. So, from India to the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, they had telescopes trained on this.
One of the pictures I sent you right after or soon after the impact was from an 11-inch telescope, and it did surprisingly well.
Oh, that was the one on Reunion Island in the middle
Okay.
of the Indian Ocean, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was pretty. Yeah, that was a really good shot. I mean, it had a lot of pixelation in it because it was very small on the sensor, but it did show. It did show what happened. It did show
Yeah.
this.
Oh yeah.
No,
You can see the cloud of debris coming off of it.
yeah. So so this is a high resolution image of Dimorphos moments before impact. Um, you'll notice that it's not clear around the outside edges, but in the middle, it's perfectly focused. That's because this camera is heading straight for that spot. And these parts are moving relatively fast away from or along the camera's range versus the parts directly under the impact point. So this will be the most focused shot. That's at a high speed. You can tend to see the central part of a frame being focused versus the outside edges because they're moving away at a faster speed relative
Yeah.
to you.
I was
So,
curious about in that image when we first when the Dart craft passed Didymos and was closing in on Dimorphos. Uh, there at the lower left
oh
end
yes,
of the asteroid, it just showed up as a little tiny white dot. And if you look at it, the sunlight is evidently coming from the upper right, and the shadows are going down toward about 8 o'clock in the image. As we first saw detail on Dimorphos, that spot at lower left, 8 o'clock, was just a tiny little dot. And
yep,
then once we got close like this, that it turned into almost like a straight line.
yeah.
And if you consider the sun angle here, I wonder, what is that showing? Because that end of it looks like it's in shadow, but the Sure does stand out in the light,
Yeah, there's
and
an
it's quite
illusion.
an quite an extended object too.
I think there's an illusion at play here, and that is that when you look at this, it looks like it might be egg shaped. Okay, and if you think it's egg shaped, then that highlighted area in the lower left doesn't make any sense. However, if it's not egg shaped and the part that's disappearing into shadow as it moves to the lower left here actually dips in, then that could be an elevated area of the asteroid beyond, being illuminated by the very same sun. So we don't know the perspective yet on this view. We have to have a 3D model of, of Dimorphos to know what's really going on. That could be one thing. Um, so that could be the reason why we see it like that. And I thought it was very interesting as well. I called that out almost immediately too. That looks really odd. How could that be? What's that? What's that look like? That's pretty strange. You know.
I
But
wouldn't
I'll
be a
tell you,
bit surprised if somebody isn't working on a 3D model as we speak.
I'm sure they are. The only trouble is they don't have a lot of data um, to work from, and they didn't orbit this little asteroid. They just have these approach views, and maybe those approach views can give them some kind of information that'll help them. But I'm not sure if it's enough. It's like trying to do a 3D model of like your head, but only by taking pictures from the front. How can you model the back? How can you
Yeah.
model the sides? They're going to be very, very wrong, very wrongly calculated.
Looking at that object at the lower left corner there, if you look to the upper right of that, there are two other bright bar-shaped features that are sort of reminiscent of that one on the bottom right.
Yeah, because they're sticking up higher. That's right. At least that's what it appears. But the perspective on these things can really be it can thwart your sensibility sometimes, and I think that's kind of what's going on here. We have to just wait for a proper 3D model. I don't think it's egg shaped. I think there's a divot on this lower left side,
Hmm.
and that this part coming toward us here in the just below center and to the left is actually going further into the page, so to speak, than the other material.
I
Yeah,
have a question,
Yeah,
if I
Tara.
may.
Sure.
Wouldn't this thing be spinning? I mean, if it got hit and I see everything was ejected out in all different directions, but if it seems like it would start tumbling. And so how do we know it's not part of the tumbling that's making that flashing and the reflection bigger? And
Okay, well that we can answer right away because this is prior to impact. This image is before the impact, and we're seeing this white thing.
but wouldn't we know what the shape of it was before impact?
Well, actually, there's been some radar studies of it, but we did radar studies and saw Didymus with radar, but Dimorphos has been a bit of a mystery, because it's so small. It's only a tenth of a mile across, just 525, 535 feet. So, seeing it, I'm amazed we struck it only 17 meters off center. To be honest, but I
I
think we have, I think we have ways to go. Go ahead, Daryl.
I would wonder. I mean, if Dimorphos and Didymus have been together long enough, if Dimorphos might not have been tidally locked to Dimorphos or
I sus
to Didymus.
Yeah, that's what you meant. I think at some level they will be because they're really close. But then again, keep in mind, Didymus, right? The size of Didymus that's actually very important, right? Because as can we look at the size of Didymus? That's 780 meters. That's 2,600 feet, right? Over half a mile. So, what kind of gravity can we expect on something that size relative to Dimorphos at some distance away, orbiting it? Um, Either way, gravity being a weak force, it'll still tidally lock if close enough. So I imagine that Dimorphos was in some way tidally locked to Didymus now.
Yeah, and per your question, Tara, if it was tidally locked, it would still be rotating once every revolution around Dimorphos, whatever that revolution period is.
He meant
Right.
Didymus.
Didymus.
But you know what though? The thing is, Tara, keep in mind that the probe was only 6 feet by 8 feet in length, and this was 535 feet across.
It's
So
amazing.
yeah,
It was moving at 4 miles a second, and I'm
yeah,
sure somebody's already calculated the energy, in that mass.
right.
4 miles a second. That's a pretty good chunk.
Yeah, but trying to figure out how much of that energy was dispersed harmlessly because of the spray versus how much that energy was adding to the component in the direction they wanted to slow the asteroid down in, that's going to be kind of
Yeah.
difficult. Like right
I,
here in this image, by the way, the asteroid's coming directly at us, not because the probe is going toward it, but because that's the direction of the orbit. It's actually orbiting around Didymus in a way that the probe struck it in a way to slow it down. So it's hitting it in the opposite the direction it's moving to kind of slow it down. Okay, it's like putting on the brakes on a runway when you're landing. Okay, uh, that's the equivalent of pushing on the nose of the plane to slow it down. Well, the same way we're pushing on the nose of Dimorphos here to slow it down in orbit around Didymus, and it remains to be seen whether this was successful. By the way, but interestingly, the images that were captured of this were just spectacular. Okay,
yeah.
now we mentioned that CubeSat. Okay, the light Italian CubeSat for imaging of asteroids probe that was released a week before Encounter. Well, this is what it saw. Okay, that is, of course, Didymus to the right of center, lower center. And then to the upper right there, that fuzzy cloud, that's the debris cloud from the strike on Dimorphos. Now, uh, a little further along, if you analyze it, you can get it to look like this. Now, look at the stringy niche. Look at how stringy that looks. I mean, it looks like a Stargate opening up, and this
It's
asteroid's going to go through it,
cool.
right?
Little tentacles. Mhm.
Right, like tentacles. Yeah,
Jellyfish.
yeah,
Big bada boom.
yeah. Now that uh, that worried scientists when that happened because they actually speculated. Some speculated, did we, because this was a rubble pile, did we just disrupt this whole rubble pile? Is there going to be an asteroid left over? They thought, well, it'll make like a 10-foot diameter crater. That's what they thought it would do. 10-foot diameter crater.
At,
And
at
at
that speed.
Dimorphos.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they thought they would make. But now they're thinking it's going to be much larger if it's there. Here's my prediction. Because it's a rubble pile, I predict that by the time they get out there in 2026 with another follow-up mission to image this, which is the next scheduled mission, I think it'll recongeal and just, whatever's left over, they'll still have particles flying around, orbiting both asteroids, okay, from this impact. And basically, those particles could become a danger to any future spacecraft going out there now.
Really.
But again, if they're matching the speed, then the particles will be the particles will be moving at a certain speed that may be less harmful, as long as we're matching speed to the body and the parent body and the and Dimorphos. So that's really cool. Now the question arises: okay, where are these asteroids? I mean, where are they? Well, I prepared something for you. First of all, these are all the observatories right here listed on the United States that are going to be observing this over the next couple of years, because they're going to be looking at this location in space for quite some time from all these different locations. Now, currently, and Daryl, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but Dimorphos is in Eridanus, the river. The constellation of Eridanus, or Eridanus, some people say. And it's moving fairly fast. So by the time November rolls around, where we can actually see it with the Skytour live stream telescope, it's actually going to be up in Monoceros, just east of Orion.
Uh-huh.
So it's possible we might be able to see Dimorphos with a long exposure. We have to see.
Cool.
I'm not sure.
Well,
But
something to look forward to.
I know, it'd be interesting to see it. Now, as far as where it is, okay, this here, let me I guess that's the size of it. Okay. If you look at the top there, it says the sun. Well, that's the sun out down to Jupiter at the bottom. Okay. So you see the sun at the top here. Okay. And then you have Mercury. And then you have one asteroid that's known to be near Venus right there. Okay. And that one, 2070 AV2. And then you have the Earth. And then you have what's called these near Earth asteroids, these NEAs or NEOs, near Earth objects. And these guys are the ones that we are concerned about. And in fact, Didymus is one of those. All right. Didymus is one of those, being only 6.7 million miles away from us. Okay. Didymus is one of these guys. So we care very much what these asteroids do. So this mission was designed to see if we could move these asteroids that are nearby. And Dimorphos, being a tiny speck, is more than capable of creating an extinction level event if it struck the Earth as a whole. Now, to Daryl's point before, let's go to that point where we say we bust this asteroid into billions, no, trillions of little pieces. Then each of those could actually enter the Earth's atmosphere and harmlessly burn up. But it's not so harmless, because what do trillions of particles entering the Earth's atmosphere all in the same several days, over a few days, cause to the planet? It causes, go ahead, say it. One of you knows.
Chaos.
Yeah, you got chaos. What else? Daryl, where am I going with this? Daryl knows, I think.
Carbon. What is it
No,
called?
I don't
It's
know.
something in the
Okay.
air.
Okay. It's going to heat up the atmosphere, okay, and it's going to
Well,
cause a
yes.
tremendous rise in temperatures. So it's going to definitely have a major effect on Earth's climate because of it. And it'll start fires all over the planet for sure. The bigger particles reach the Earth. So we would be plunged into a nuclear winter situation most likely anyway. All right. But if Dimorphos, a tenth of a mile in size, struck the Earth as a whole, well, we could be looking at a similar thing. But keep in mind that, the Chicxulub impactor was several miles across. I think it was 10 miles across. Okay. And that caused a major extinction event. Something a tenth of that size, okay, a tenth of a mile across, actually much smaller than that, would actually cause a much lower level extinction event if it did at all. But the fires of trillions of particles entering its atmosphere and some of them reaching the ground, depending on the size of the particles, could be damaging to our planet overall. But there's several ways, several techniques that they thought for stopping these guys from hurting us. One way was a nuclear bomb, as Daryl alluded, when you can blow up an asteroid and then all the little particles come down and fall on Terra's house. Okay, no. Or we could actually plant a rocket engine on the surface and fire it, and use the surface of the asteroid itself to make the fuel for the rocket. And that rocket engine would fire, probably for a period of years, making me all blurry, like you see right here. Okay. And that rocket engine firing for that long would then slowly move the asteroid in its orbit. Okay. The DART project is an impactor. It's an instantaneous attempt to move an asteroid in one fell swoop. If we have no time, that's the best approach. We have to try and move it. So we would have to have things on station, in orbit, ready to go, firing on out to an incoming asteroid.
I have heard scenarios of some experimentation similar to DART, maybe done by possibly unethical parties that could make things worse, not better, or ultimately you might be looking at a cosmic blackmail scenario, that somebody's going to do it on purpose. Who knows what the future holds?
Mark, you're muted. Oh,
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was just simulating the vacuum of space. I
Of
said that
course.
would. I said that would make a. Thank you, Tara. I said that would make a good science fiction story, and although it's been done before, I think.
Yeah.
But that said, Tara, when do we go on the break? Do you know?
We have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. So, thank you very much. So, I want to make sure that we also discuss the types of asteroids we're talking about here. Okay. There's a lot of different types of asteroids out there. In fact, there's about 25 different designations, but the main ones, okay, have to uh, uh, go to the composition of the asteroids and what they're primarily basically made of. Now, even example, this asteroid right here, okay, this is called Matilda. Hi, Matilda. What a cutie. Okay. Now,
Waltzing
Matilda, Walton, yeah. Matilda represents an asteroid that's about that's characteristic of 75% of all asteroids. It's carbonaceous, meaning it has a lot of carbon. Now that also means it's very low brightness. Now, low brightness asteroids, uh, those are a problem because they're not going to be seen as easily, right? Now, Matilda being one of those, if that struck us, it might strike us out of the dark without us even recognizing it's there, possibly. We'd have to do a radar study to probably see it because it wouldn't show up very well on visual. And unfortunately, these type are 75% of the asteroid population. Now, the next in line, we have asteroids like this one.
Time
I
to
think
break.
we're about out of time. Yep.
I thought you said 2 minutes.
Yeah.
57.
Minute and a half. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll come back then, and we'll talk about that in just a couple seconds. All right, guys, we'll be right back after these words from whoever's going to say whatever they're going to say. See ya.
DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
The experiencer phenomenon is happening for a lot of people just like you all over the world. People are telling very similar stories about personal encounters with non-human intelligence. The Mutual UFO Network has research, resources, and support to help you make sense of what is happening. Our experiencer community is growing every day. Join MUFON, find your friends.
Hi, I'm Austin Butler from Baz Luhrmann's new film, Elvis.
Tomorrow, all of America will be talking about Elvis Presley.
As a blood donor himself, Elvis shared the gift of life with patients in need and asked others to do the same. We're encouraging you to give blood this summer. Please visit redcrossblood.org/Elvis movie today to learn more.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
Hey, welcome back to SkyTour Radio. You know, as an astronomer, I think I'm a little bit absent-minded sometimes, and I will lose track of time. And so Tara and Daryl, well, Daryl's also absent-minded. See, if you're scientific, you're absent-minded, I think. And Tara's artistic, and
I
she's on top of her game.
sometimes I resemble that remark, though. I
Well,
may be absent-minded.
all right. Well, fair enough. Um, I don't know, but anyway, we were talking about the different types of the asteroids, and there's basically three different types. Okay, we have and we talked about this one here. That's the C type. 75% of all asteroids are like this, and they have a lot of high carbon content. And I mentioned that they're actually low brightness, which is a problem for detection. Right? Then we have asteroids like this guy here. This one was a triumph by Rosetta. The Rosetta mission was on its way out, and as it went out to comet Churyumov-Gerasimenko 67P and landed with Philae lander on the comet and took these amazing images. Okay, we ended up finding out that some of these asteroids out there could be passed by the Rosetta mission, and this is one of those. This is an M-type asteroid, and its name was Lutetia. Okay, Lutetia, Lutetia. And Lutetia is an M-type asteroid. That's an asteroid that has high metal content. And it's actually thought that asteroids like this guy right here are the source of all iron meteorites in our solar system. Asteroids like this, all right? Lutetia. Not Lutetia itself, but asteroids like it. Now, on top of that, so we have the C-type asteroids, which are carbon. We have the M-type asteroids, which are more metal. But then we have guys like this. This asteroid, this is Eros. Eros makes up, it's made mostly of silica materials. And this represents 17% of all asteroids, right? I don't think I mentioned Lutetia here is actually 8% of all asteroids. Eros makes up basically dirt, right? Silica-based content. And so it makes up 70%. Now, Eros is a cool asteroid because it's this asteroid right here that we actually landed on this asteroid. Did you know that? Yeah, we did. The Near-Earth Asteroid Rendezvous landed on Eros with a little probe. And I was very good friends with one of the scientists on the team. She was actually a Catholic nun. We've talked about her, Sister Mary Ellen Murphy. And she was a astrophysicist and a chemist. And she was one of the people on this program. And we had a great time talking to her about this. And I said to her, I'm not worthy, when she came over here and we were talking. Because she would visit often. And I didn't know. She never mentioned that she was on this team. I don't know why. Anyway, Eros represents, like I said, 17% of the asteroids in our solar system. And so that's really interesting to know that there's all these different types, but they're broken down within these types. You have the C, M, and S, carbonaceous, metallic, and silica based, and within them there's various. Go ahead.
That corresponds closely with types of meteors or meteorites.
That's right.
Carbonaceous, stony, and stony iron and iron.
You got it. And now we know from the study overall that the iron meteorites might be coming from objects like Lutetia. Even though Lutetia represents about 8% of all the asteroids, these metal ones. So it's pretty interesting. But the thing that's really interesting, you got to notice, okay, if we take a look at Eros, because we did close passes of Eros. Eros is a silica-based asteroid. Look at its surface, okay? Look at that. Now, here you're seeing that there's smooth areas. You could almost imagine that you could walk on this surface, right? Now compare that to Dimorphos. How can you walk on that surface? It's made of rocks attached, up against other rocks. Eros at least has a cover of soil, dirt that you could actually walk on. And it's probably not a rubble pile like Dimorphos and like Bennu and like other asteroids that we know of. Osiris-Rex went to Bennu, okay?
Uh,
Um,
I saw a picture of Dimorphos just a day or so ago, where they had projected a human figure
mhm.
to scale on the face of Dimorphos, and it was. Can you go back to that image for a second?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, that rock just about in the middle. A human is smaller than that rock in the middle.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a tenth of a mile across.
Yeah,
So if you imagine a tenth of 535 feet, what's 6 feet out of that?
yeah,
You could actually take that long axis and divide it by 535 and get the measurement and know exactly how much is a foot. Make six of those. You got a 6 foot human. You can scale it out. So it's pretty cool. So obviously, the soils between an asteroid that's actually relatively cohesive and so forth is not the same as a rubble pile. The rubble piles could be dangerous to us because the Earth's gravity, as it approached the Earth, let's say it was one of those, might tend to tear it apart. And if it tears it apart, we could get a long stream of asteroid debris raining down in our atmosphere for days. And again, that brings to light the problem of heating of the atmosphere, temperature change, fires, and any damage by the strikes, right?
yep. And that reminds me of the Younger Dryas Impacts hypothesis, which is hotly contested in some circles. That's the one I've talked in the past about the
Yes.
Abu Huraira fireball and the Tel Aman supposed impacts that happened over in Syria,
And then the
not at all far from Göbekli Tepe in
you know,
Turkey, and they think the same impacts, if they really happened, also killed off the megafauna here in North America.
yeah, and
It happened
that could
all over
be,
the world.
yeah, that could be, and I mean, I think that in the Younger Dryas impact, they actually had compounds that could only be created by extreme heat in some of the ruins, if I recall.
Yes. At Abu Huraira, they said it must have hit like 4,000 degrees centigrade, and everything was covered in molten glass,
Yeah, yeah,
and
because
it probably
silica used to
vaporized
that.
any animal or human.
Yeah, probably for many miles around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but these rubble piles then to me represent a problem. Now, a bigger asteroid like Eros, let's say Eros, okay, coming toward the Earth, it's an oblong shape, okay. Uh, Eros is 33 by 13 by 13 kilometers in size, or 21 by 8 miles, roughly, okay. So as it's coming in, it's going to be tumbling a little bit, maybe. Terra likes tumbling asteroids, okay. And as it comes in, it likely is going to be torn apart by the Earth's gravity, because there is a certain limit that an object can be within another planet and not be torn apart. Within
Roche
that
limit.
limit, that's right. Within that limit, called the Roche limit, is a magic zone where all bets are off because the differential force of gravity on one side of the object is much stronger than the other side, and so it might tend to pull this object apart. So if an asteroid was going to strike the Earth, you can bet that it would probably be that we would get struck by many pieces of the asteroid, not just by one big thump. We would end up having a break apart situation where we'd get hit with multiples. Um, there are some theories that the Yucatan impactor had been several objects that broke apart. Uh, so it's possible. All right. And so that said, this mission, the DART mission, the dual asteroid redirection test, was successful in terms of technique. We hit only 55 feet off the mark in the center of an asteroid that was 6.7 million miles away. It means that we can target an asteroid, guys. That's what it means. And if this redirection works, it means we have a valid technique. I wish it wasn't the rubble pile asteroid, because I don't think that the results can be fairly gauged against a solid asteroid. But I think we would have to do this to an asteroid that's solid and not just a rubble pile. You know. So that said, um, I think it's important now. Tara, you've got some questions for us today, don't you?
Well, sure, but I just on that, wouldn't we want to test it on both a solid and a rubble pile? I mean, are they planning to test the solid
No,
option?
not right
No.
now. No, I don't know
And
that they knew Dimorphos was a classic rubble pile until we got there. But it was small enough, and it was a binary asteroid. I mean, it's like Ida. Asteroid Ida is a binary asteroid as well, with a small little component as well. And those asteroids, we should test. We should test on an asteroid that's of solid composition, or relatively solid composition.
you would think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think they knew Dimorphos was going to be as much of a rubble pile as it was when we got there. But you know what? If you have questions, what we'll do is we'll let Daryl do his deep dive, and then we're going to come
Sounds
back
great.
and have you do some questions for us.
Sounds great. I want to hear what Daryl has to say.
Yeah, Daryl, are you ready to go for it?
Okie dokie.
Okie
Give me
dokie.
just a second here.
Okay.
The deep dive with Daryl.
You got
And
it.
away we go. Okay. This is at about 12 minutes after 5 p.m. my location, Colorado Springs. And you see the sun hasn't set yet, but we passed the autumn equinox about 10 days ago. And the sun is setting before 7 o'clock now, about a quarter till 7. If you take away daylight savings time, it's setting before 6 o'clock. I wanted to start here, though, because you can see before the sun sets, Venus and Mercury are west of the sun. That is, they're in the morning sky. But Mercury is moving this way. Mercury is moving west. It just moved from the evening sky to the morning sky. But Venus, on the other hand, is moving east. Venus is about to pass on the far side of the sun, and it's going to pop up over here after sunset. Before you know it, it'll be rising higher and higher and higher for months on end. It'll make a pretty evening object here for the winter. Now we're going to go ahead and sun just set. You see Virgo has her head down under the horizon already. Libra is about to set. Scorpius is close to setting. Scorpius is so far south that it is about the lowest of the summer objects, and it is well gone by pretty much gone 8 o'clock. And it's being followed by Sagittarius now, and we're going to swing south, and you can pretty much say goodbye to Scorpius. And Sagittarius is pretty much on the meridian at sunset now. So the teapot's going away too. And tonight it's about a first quarter moon, I think, or a day from. And the moon is actually inside the teapot, which will make a pretty view. And the one thing I wanted to talk about tonight is what is prominent in the southeast now is Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn was at opposition in August, I think. That's when the planet is opposite the sun in the sky, just like a full moon. The sun sets, the moon or the planet rises. That's when it is generally closest, biggest, and brightest to us for the year. Saturn is past opposition now. It has moved from the morning sky to the evening sky. Jupiter was at opposition September 26th, if I remember correctly, and it is also now an evening object. Jupiter, if you go out as soon as it's dark and you look over toward the east, the brightest thing you'll see is Jupiter. It's a large, bright, creamy white object. If you look about 4 or 4.5 hands to the right of Jupiter, you'll see Saturn. It is much dimmer than Jupiter, but it's still a pretty bright object. And if you look before them, you'll see here's the star Fomalhaut now down in Pisces Austrinus, the southern fish. You'll see the rings of Saturn if you have a telescope and a bunch of moons, depending on the size of the telescope. Any optical aid at all, binoculars should show you the 4 big Galilean moons of Jupiter. And if you have a telescope, you'll see bands on the face of the planet. You may see the big red spot. You see now that we are heading into fall and headed toward winter, and the plane of the ecliptic is heading, it's heading farther north as we get into the fall and the winter. But Saturn is in eastern Capricorn, Jupiter is in western Pisces, and I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to go back to September 6th, okay? And we're going to change the time. We did a stream on September 6th, and I was up late that night, and I went out about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I saw this. If you keep going along the ecliptic, past Jupiter and Pisces and Aries and into Taurus, I was really taken by this. On the night of, actually it's the morning of the 7th now, 1 o'clock in the morning, I went out and found Taurus, and Mars had just entered the Hyades star cluster in Taurus, which is the head of the bull. And there are the two horns of the bull. Aldebaran is the big red star. It's actually a foreground object to the Hyades, but it's a bright red star, and Aldebaran is the eye of the bull. And seeing that on the morning of the 7th of September, suddenly Taurus had two red eyes. It was very striking to see. Now, I got up the next morning, I started playing with Heavens Above and with Stellarium here, and I saw some really neat things, which I'm going to try to share with you. I'm going to advance slowly, by days first. If you see night by night, you see Mars moving along the ecliptic, and hey, look, the moon went by a few days later, 10 days later. And Mars has moved on into the horns of Taurus the bull. And we're going to keep going. And you see Mars continues moving. But watch what happens. Mars slowed down and Mars stopped moving. This is called retrograde. It's moving into retrograde motion. Mars and all the planets generally move from west to east across the sky night by night. Except as they approach opposition, they will appear to slow down and stop. And then they will actually start moving backwards. It slowed down, there goes the moon again. Mars stops right there, and then Mars is going to start moving backwards again. Now, ultimately, we're going to go ahead a month to December the 7th. Mars is at opposition on the night of December the 7th. Okay, the evening of the 7th as seen from the U.S., the morning of the 8th as seen from Europe and in the Eastern Hemisphere. Now then, this is 1 o'clock in the morning on the 7th. Darn it, come on, settle down. And here is the moon. On the morning of the 8th from the Eastern Hemisphere, probably be easier just to do this. Okay, and I'm going to have to find it again. Bear with me just a second.
It's a big sky, Daryl. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay, well... And we'll bump it forward a day. Okay, here comes Taurus, is just rising. And here is about 7:19 in the evening. From my location, Taurus just rose. Mars is still in the horns of the bull. And golly, look how close the moon is to Mars. Now, I saw this when I was playing with the astronomy programs. And I'm going to advance it an hour. And another hour. Look at that. It looks almost like the moon is moving in front of Mars. And ultimately, I did a little digging. And that night, look at there, the moon is in front of Mars.
Wow.
And I did a little digging, and I'm going to change screens here for a second, if I can figure out how. Bear with me just a second.
We should observe that.
I certainly hope so.
It's very cool.
Okay, now, this is, the moon is indeed going to pass right in front of the planet Mars on the night of Mars's opposition, the evening of December 7th from the U.S., or the morning of December 8th as seen from Western Europe. Mars is going to pass right in front of Mars. The moon will pass right in front of Mars. And here is a map that shows where it is visible. It's going to be visible from Western Europe, basically. The very beginning of it may be more from the Eastern Europe, but that's going to be when the sun is about to rise there in far Eastern Europe. But it's morning of the 8th everywhere in Europe, okay? But then over here in North America, it's going to be visible everywhere except for the southeast United States and the East Coast. This is definitely something that I hope we get the chance to look at.
Well, it should be. I mean, we'll give it a shot.
And I'm going to go back for just a second. Bear with me. Okay. I can only imagine what an astrologer long ago would have thought of this. The whole idea of Mars, the god of war, becoming a second red eye in the bull's head in the Hyades there, and then the god of war hanging out between the horns of the bull. Now the ancients didn't know what an opposition was. They didn't know what it meant when a planet moved backwards in its orbit, which is what we see at opposition. And the whole idea of an opposition is we are passing that planet because we're closer to the sun than that planet, Mars or Jupiter or Saturn as the case may be. Because we're passing it, we see that object appear to move backwards in the sky or to move retrograde. But it must have meant something to an ancient to have seen the god of war hanging out in the horns of Taurus the bull.
That
And
seems
then on
really,
top of everything, to see the moon pass over and black out Mars. And then an hour later, it'll take about an hour for the moon to pass. You see here, by then, the moon is clearing Mars again. So the moon moves about its own diameter in the sky in the course of an hour. So the whole occultation is the event, as it's called. It's sort of like an eclipse. The moon will pass in front of Mars, and it'll block Mars for about an hour, and then Mars will pop back up on the west side.
Now, Daryl, one thing to mention too is Mars in this view looks like a big round orange object. It's not. It's actually a pinpoint about like a star to most people. It'll be a roundish object, but tiny, and so it's going to be much smaller than the moon.
This is true. When Mars is at opposition this year, on December 7th, it's only going to be about 17 arc seconds across.
Which is
Now,
small.
when we see Jupiter this year, it is 50 some odd arc seconds. It's much larger. It's a bigger planet, but it's farther away. And Mars at a good opposition might be 23 arc seconds across or so. This is not a great opposition for Mars, but it's going to be as close as it'll get. And people with a good telescope should be able to see some details on the face of Mars. We've looked at Mars at the last opposition a couple of years ago, and it was subtle, but we could see a fair amount of surface detail there.
And that was with a telescope with a wide field, you know.
Yes.
But just so people understand, one of our viewers, Cosmic Ray, says it'll be 100% clouds. Yeah,
Think positive. Uh,
that's funny.
Hopefully it'll be clear here. Hopefully it'll be clear in Arizona. The monsoon, knock on wood, should be well over by then.
Yeah, I think it'll be clear for us to see that.
But
I
hey,
noticed you.
folks, it'll be beautiful to see even naked eye.
Yeah,
So the
and
night of December 7th, certainly go out and take a look. I will post a link to that article with the map in chat here in just a second.
yeah. Now
Uh,
show people. Now go back to Aldebaran again, and just up above, show them the Pleiades again, because the Pleiades are very striking as well. And so seeing the moon, Mars, and the Pleiades and Aldebaran all in the same view is stunning.
yes.
Um, and to get an idea, if you don't mind, I'll just throw something up real quick. This is what our sky tour view of the Pleiades looks like. Okay, which you'll notice is actually gorgeous. Now, in the telescope we use, you can actually see these clouds and these beautiful dust clouds uh, that are being illuminated by the starlight from the Pleiades. But we'll show you more of that too when it comes around. So I think we'll look for that. We'll look for that occultation of the planet Mars by the moon, and that should be a fun time. This should be a fun stream.
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I hope it clear. Pray for clear skies that night.
Absolutely.
Are we done with the deep dive?
No, you can keep going if you want.
Keep going.
Okay. Well, let's see. I need to get there you go. Okay, it's back. Uh,
We
so
can
here
show
we are.
objects.
I'm sorry.
We can show objects in this area too that we've looked at if you like. I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah, very good. I'll just finish this off.
Okay.
Again, you see the head of the bull there. Excuse me. The Hyades is the closest star cluster to Earth. It makes a very distinctive V shape in the sky. There's the nose of the bull. Aldebaran is the red eye of the bull. And past the ends of the V, if you connect the dots, there are the two horns of the bull. And actually, M1 Crab Nebula is right there next to that tip of the horn of the bull, the eastern horn. When we see the Pleiades, that is about 400 light years away. Remember right, the Hyades is about 120 or 150 light years away. And if you can step out and take a good look, you can get a very three-dimensional feel for what's going on that we're seeing. Aldebaran's about 70 light years away. The Hyades maybe 120, 150. And the Pleiades are about 400 light years away.
Yeah, it's a 3D universe. That's why we say that all the
Absolutely.
time.
Yes. And you can really get a feel for that when you see this view. I am looking forward to this more than, golly, I can't remember the last time I was looking forward to something as much as this. I really hope we get clear skies.
Yeah, what's the elevation, by the way, at that time of night? That looks like it's
Uh,
going to be pretty high up.
They talk about that here in the article. I'd have to dig through the. Okay, blah blah
Blah, blah.
blah blah. It's going to be not very that high. It will be well up. It occurs at 7:13 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's for me in Colorado. 8:13 for the East Coast, and it'll be the morning of the 8th if you're in Europe or in the Eastern Hemisphere. And to get a decent view, you'll have to be in Western Europe. I hope that doesn't disappoint some people, but that's the way it goes. It will be. It won't be too high.
Well,
Taurus-
can you select the moon and actually get altitude, elevation values from it right there? Do you have any there? Okay, there we go. What's it say for altitude, elevation? I can't read that from here.
Azimuth and altitude. Azimuth 104 degrees 48 minutes. Altitude is 57.5 degrees, and that's toward the end of the occultation.
Okay, well,
Let,
we'll be able to catch
yeah,
part of it for sure.
let me step back an hour.
Okay.
2 hours, 17:30. I don't think those times quite jive, but at the beginning, it's going to be about 34 degrees elevation,
Okay, we can
altitude.
still view that as well. So I think we got I think we can see it at the beginning and at the end.
Hopefully,
Yep.
we'll see how it goes.
Hmm.
But that is that for now. I'm sure we will talk more about this as we get closer to December the 7th.
Yeah, and the moon itself, you know, tell people what the phase of the moon's going to be that night.
Oh, the moon is going to be full also, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say we need to make sure people know that. So
Both
if you
both the moon and Mars will be at opposition that night.
right, so when you look at the moon and you look at Mars, they're gonna look round in your telescope. So they're gonna do the same here. When we do it with Sky Tour, you'll see the same thing. Now, incidentally, Darrow was up by Auriga, the constellation there, where he was just looking. Auriga was, I think, just a little bit to your northeast from where you were looking at the moon occultation, where
Yes,
Mars was.
let me go back to that. Yeah, Auriga the Charioteer. You see, that star there is called El Nath.
Hmm.
That's the tip of the western horn of the bull. Uh, and El Nath also belongs to Auriga the Charioteer.
Yeah, and in Auriga, there's some really cool things to see, and we've seen a few. I want to show you one right now. Let
Okay.
Daryl zoom in here a little bit. Uh, does it show you any of the nebulae in there?
Not easily. This is the
Okay.
online version.
Okay. Well, here's one of the ones that we look at often in Auriga right here. This is called the Flaming Star Nebula. I mean, look at that beautiful emission nebula. The red ionized hydrogen, excited hydrogen, and that blue, that's the scattered starlight from that star that's actually being scattered by the dust particles that are also mixed into this nebula. Really, really fascinating to see these types of nebulae live. And so that's what's over our head. We don't really realize what's over our head until we actually use like a telescope like Skytour Livestream. So it's really cool, you know. So if
Oh yeah.
anyone out there has any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat for tonight even, and Daryl, Tara, or myself will answer them. Um, so Daryl, thank you. That deep dive was fantastic. It's great. I can't wait till December 7th. We're gonna work on getting the telescope uh, ready to look. Well, they will be up and running, I think, for many weeks by then. Obviously, we'll have it back
Hopefully.
in. Yeah, it's probably going to be fixed next week, actually. But um, we have obviously people's schedules. It's a long day. If I was there, I would do it. I'd do it all by myself if I had to. But unfortunately, I'm 2,500 miles away,
It's a
so I
little
always have
far.
to depend on her and Marianne. I feel
The,
you guys have no idea how guilty I feel.
them
Like
steak dinners are adding up fast, aren't they?
steak dinner. I'm gonna have to buy her a freaking puppy by the time this is done.
Okay, okay.
See what I mean? Mm. Oh, and I'll get
It's
her
a
a
privilege to get to help, so it's awesome. It's
well, I
okay.
I do know a little tarantula that might want to go home with her too. There's a tarantula. She's like some
Yeah. Last time there was a beautiful horny toad
horny
out
toad.
there.
Right,
It
the
was
horny toad. Beautiful
huge.
pictures. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what's gonna greet us next when we go out there? I came out of the observatory one night and I saw that same tarantula disappear in a hole the diameter of my thumb, like that. Whip. That whole body went boop, right down that little thimble-sized hole. I was like, whoa! And next to me, running right alongside me, was a giant desert rat. It had to be this had to be 14 inches long. Okay, this massive thing, and it ran under a big propane tank out there. I was like, whoa, wow, what's that doing out there? You know, so there's a lot of life, a lot of beings and creatures out there that are very different from where people live sometimes. tarantulas being one of them. I've never seen a Gila monster, and Gila monsters are there too.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, see, that's
And
Tara said they're
and
beautiful.
chuckwallas are all over the place too. They're
Oh yes,
cool.
you sent me pictures of chuckwallas at your house. In fact,
Yep.
yeah.
They're all over.
Only
Carol,
time
you got
I ever s-
chuckwallas?
I'm sorry?
You got chuckwallas?
No.
No.
I don't even know what a chuckwalla is. I saw a Gila monster at the Desert Museum when I was a kid.
Yeah.
They're
Well, there was
beaded.
one. There was one in on the property adjoining the observatory property. So there's all kinds of creatures out there that are just amazing. So a lot of cool stuff. Anyway, I think we'll move on now. Thank you so much, Daryl, for that amazing deep
Yes,
dive.
thanks, Daryl.
Sure, hope I didn't bore you.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
I have more
Uh,
questions.
Yes, and that's exactly where we're going. I want to hear all your questions now because this is now Tara's Cosmos, and I'd love to hear what she has to say about all these things we've been talking about.
Well, thanks. Well, I have a question about you were talking about how the metal meteorites come from a certain class of asteroids, but I was under the impression that most asteroids are in their own orbit. And so my question is how do these pieces get broken off? Are these old ancient impacts, or do they still bump and hit each other? And
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Yes,
It's like
yes to all
billiards
that.
going on up in space.
Yeah, yes to all that. Now, it doesn't mean that if you went into the asteroid belt, you're going to see collisions everywhere you look. That's not what happens. But the universe is vast. The universe has time on its side, so you might have possibly a few 100,000 collisions a year. I don't know. No one can really estimate that. But that's more than enough to generate all kinds of particles that can make their way here eventually because their trajectory has changed a little bit. And then they go on a circuitous path that take them, I don't know, 500,000 years to make their way into the inner solar system or 100,000 years to get here. And they find their way to Earth where they die in one glorious instant of immolation as they enter the Earth's atmosphere. But these asteroids we talked about, the M type, the metallic asteroids, those asteroids, when they collide, they will shed particles. And not only that, but those particles that are shed off of comets as they pass through are also going to be, some that have iron content and metal content, as well as carbon content and so forth. So that stuff will end up falling into our atmosphere as well. And on top of that, we've got the primordial supply, right? We have the primordial particle supply that's sitting in our solar system. You see it as zodiacal light. It's the dust that you look at backlit by the sun sometimes. And there's theories that say that maybe most of that dust actually came from Mars, from impacts on Mars. Well,
Yeah.
many of those impacts that struck Mars blew stuff into the atmosphere around Mars and beyond. And so some of that could get here as well.
And
You
that
see?
seems to be a popular theory nowadays.
Yeah, but I reserve the right to just doubt it until more evidence comes along, but I can see why they say it.
Yeah.
Mars has been subject to some big impacts.
When you see asteroids in the movies, it's nothing like reality. It's not like
Right.
Star Wars or Star Trek, where they're flying through this field full of big, huge space rock boulders. I mean, if you're out in the middle of the asteroid belt, you will probably never see an asteroid as more than a pinpoint of light.
Wow.
Yeah. That's an accurate rendering of the spacing. Now, I have to say though
Wow.
that in Star Wars, when they fly through the asteroid field, who knows that maybe those could have been a very dense asteroid field. It's possible, but ours isn't. That's all we can say. So Daryl's correct on
Okay.
that for sure.
Yeah, if you collected all the asteroids out there in space and lumped them all together, it would be smaller than the moon.
Yeah, it's actually about a quarter of the size of the moon
Yeah,
in
It's
mass total.
incredible.
Can you believe it?
In space or just in our solar system?
in our solar system.
Yeah, the
Okay.
asteroids. Yeah, the asteroids here. Now that counts the asteroid belt. It doesn't count the Kuiper belt and the Oort cloud objects, which are even farther out. Okay.
Right.
Now, remember the Kuiper belt of those icy objects out beyond Pluto, right? And that's like in orbit around the Earth, around the sun, like this. Okay, but then you have an Oort belt as well of objects beyond that, and then an Oort cloud that surrounds the solar system. So the sun's gravitational force, weak as it is, can retain objects. In fact, it's thought that the total amount of debris that the sun retains goes out 3/4 of the way to Alpha Centauri. Think about that. Alpha Centauri is 4 light years away. So they're thinking that there's stuff that goes out well over 2 light years from the sun that's retained by the sun
Wow.
in some way. Isn't that crazy?
I would think,
Yeah.
Alpha Centauri is a triple star actually, but the main components are A and B, and each of those is bigger than the sun, correct? I would
Yeah.
think
So
that, where you're going to draw the property line between our sun Sol and Alpha Centauri would be wherever the gravitational, handover point is from the sun to Alpha Centauri, which would
right.
be halfway out or less.
Yeah. And if you think about that, wouldn't it be interesting to find out that we've been sharing material
Yes.
for billions of years between the two systems? And wouldn't it be interesting to find out that some of the meteors that eventually struck the Earth came from Alpha Centauri's system?
How would we find that out?
Well, we don't know. We have to get to Alpha Centauri to see what the system's compositions are like, and then we could
Yeah.
determine it.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Over the course of billions of years, though, I mean, they made a big deal when Oumuamua came through.
Mhm.
Right.
That wasn't the first time it ever happened. That's
Yeah,
just
right.
the first one that we detected that it was from outside the solar system,
Okay.
which is not even the same thing. I mean, over the course of billions of years, I'm sure plenty of space junk
Ah.
that has hit Earth has come from outside the solar system.
I think so. Like every UFO that's here.
Exactly. Interesting. Well, why is, from what I understand, the mineral content different in the different belts that we have in our solar system? The further away from the sun, aren't the content of what these asteroids are made up of different things? Like some
Well,
closer to the sun, they're carbon maybe, and
well,
further away.
yeah, if you think about it, okay, that's a very, very good question, Tara. Thank you. And by the way, you guys, we don't know what her questions are going to be. She sent the list, and I kind of glanced at it, but I didn't really give it too much attention because I don't like to see things like that ahead of time because it sounds like a canned answer. Okay. But the composition of asteroids depends on the composition of the materials at that location where the asteroids were built. Okay. Now, the asteroids didn't start out as big, giant chunks of rock. They started out as particles of dust that accreted to each other and grew into bigger objects over time. Now, the asteroid belt is a belt because of another planet out there called Jupiter. Jupiter prevents and has prevented all those asteroids from congealing into one little dwarf planet, like something smaller than the moon, because as the asteroids go around, they're closer to the sun. They move faster. Jupiter's moving slow out here. Jupiter comes along, and so Jupiter's out here. Here come the asteroids. As they get closer to Jupiter, they kind of go out of their orbit a little bit, then go back in. And that little perturbation throughout billions of years has prevented the asteroids from coalescing into one singular object. So Jupiter has prevented the asteroid belt from making a dwarf planet or another somewhat like a protoplanet in our solar system. Okay.
Yeah. Then too, though, I mean, some asteroids are big enough that if not spheroidal, they're close to it. Ceres, for example.
Yes, they are.
It's a matter of some asteroids getting large enough to assume a somewhat spherical shape, and at some point there's going to be enough mass that differentiation will go on in
Right.
that the heavy
Mantle
stuff is going to
becomes
sink to
metal
the
and
center.
molten. Yeah.
And that's maybe if a large body like that suffered a large enough impact that shattered it, that's how you get metallic asteroids, which the metal formed in the middle of a differentiated asteroid, and then it broke and the metal got sprung out into space.
Yeah, that's very possible. Now, staying with that whole concept of round bodies versus craggy looking bodies, the driving force behind that is mass. And so what happens is, as an object accretes mass and gets bigger and bigger, there is a certain point at which the interior of that body can be somewhat molten because of the mass. Okay, so instance, like on Earth, we have a core, a mantle, and the crust. The crust is solid, but is actually movable. The mantle is like plastic goo. All right, the inside of the larger dwarf planets, as we call them now, can have a mantle that's gooey, and this would mean that with every impact and everything, that the object might start off craggy, but then it'll end up rounding into a perfect sphere because that's the object that the universe loves the most. Okay. And it's because of that mantle being plasticky and gooey that the object will become a sphere. And that size turns out to be a size that we know well because Ceres is one of those dwarf planets that has become a sphere. Vesta is smaller, but not quite spherical. So we know that the size is close to what Ceres is in size. And Ceres is the biggest, what we used to call an asteroid. It's the biggest object out there in our asteroid belt that we know of. Okay. So that's why the objects tend to go round, is because their interiors become molten from the accretion of more material overhead.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
per what you asked, I think, Tara, uh, the different types of asteroids or meteors slash meteorites we talked about earlier, you had the metals, you have the stony
Right.
iron, the stones, and you have the carbonaceous ones that formed at different places or at different times or at different layers in those larger dwarf planets, for instance, that got
Mm.
broken. Uh, the characteristics are very different. The metal ones are very dense because they're metal. They're the most dense and they're the most cohesive. I mean, if you hit someone with a baseball made out of steel, it's probably not going to come apart. But if I hit you with a baseball made out of cotton candy, it's going to be easy to tear apart. When you see the carbonaceous asteroids or the carbonaceous meteorites, they tend to be quite friable. They break very easily. And that's why when I forget which one of the ones that
They're
fell in
brittle.
Russia was, uh, they found it on a frozen lake. Uh,
Chelyabinsk.
was it Chelyabinsk?
Yeah.
Uh, it tended to break into little small chunks. Whereas if what hit Arizona and made Meteor Crater was a great big hunk of iron,
Yeah, it was.
and that thing was pretty darn cohesive. It was a one great big lump of iron.
I have a piece of that
Wow.
meteor here,
Yeah,
actually. I got a
I
piece
have
of
a
that.
piece of it
Cool.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, the Canyon Diablo, right?
Uh huh.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
that could make a big difference also when something hits the Earth, what it's made out of.
Hmm.
That mass is mass, but a carbonaceous object is going to be much more friable than a metallic object. That's going to go back to the
Friable.
shotgun scenario,
Yeah.
where
Mm.
bird shots are birds versus getting hit by a 12 gauge slug is a whole lot worse than bird shot.
And there's
It's
actually
going to hit a lot harder.
there's a simulator online you can actually look up. Um, it's an asteroid impact scenario. I'm actually writing a program to actually do that as well. And
Cool.
it's from a paper that was written at some university, I forget, but they have all the equations. I'm trying to put it all into an operational system. But you have one online you can try, which is kind of fun. And you basically specify what it's made of. Is it ice? What's the density? That density
Uh-huh.
determines what it is. Um,
Okay.
so like a carbonaceous chondrite or a object that's made of just ice versus like a comet. You can specify all those different parameters and the angle of impact, and from that it can calculate the kinds of effects that would occur on Earth. For people that are doomsayers, they love this site. They sit there and say, this is how Europe
Look.
dies. Anyway, go ahead. You have more questions. I know. I can see it in your face.
Well, you were just talking about comets. So I don't know. I would assume, and I don't know. Do comets become inactive and are asteroids? Some are they like old
Oh,
comets that have become active again?
that's not a bad question. Okay. There are comets that we call dead comets, in effect, because their composition is that they were icy. And then once the ices and successive passes around the sun have melted away or ablated away all the icy coverings, what's left is a rocky core. Now, there's a good question. Well, how do you know it's not an asteroid? And how do you know it used to be a comet? How can you tell it might have had ices on it? Well, that's where other forms of science and spectral analysis can assist in trying to determine what the reverse engineering will determine. Okay. But there are certainly asteroids that might even be circling in our asteroid field now that might be former comets, but their orbit is very important. If it's in a circular orbit around the sun, it's probably an asteroid. But if it's in an elliptical orbit, then some of these near Earth asteroids, which come and go, might have been comets.
Yes.
And that's the key item that we have to look at in terms of being a comet, is
Yeah.
those guys.
There's one example of Phaeton, which
right.
is they call it a rock comet. Uh, it's the source of, I forget, the Geminids or the Quadrantids, one or the other, winter meteor shower. Uh, I guess it's thought to be an ex-comet, that it became a near-Earth comet or asteroid, and basically it lost all its water a long time ago. What you got is probably a rubble pile, collection of gravel.
Yeah. So, and that's the interesting thing about these things. I think we have time for one more question, Tara.
Oh, okay. One more question. How big does an asteroid have to be before it's no longer an asteroid?
Oh, that we kind of talked about that. That
Kind of.
was, and that is, there's a certain size at which, and that size is well known. I don't have the exact number right now, but I think it's in the range of, like, Daryl is looking it up. I could tell he's looking it up.
No, no, I'm not.
Oh, well, you should, because I can't.
He
We don't
has it
have.
in his brain.
Yeah, we don't have time.
Yeah, but yeah, we have a minute and a half left. But you know what?
Yeah.
What happens is they have to be big enough so that their interiors can be molten, and then that inside plasticky molten mantle, instead of being craggy, it's going to form a sphere, because, like I said, the universe loves the spheres. Everything
Right.
is spherical in the universe that it can be spherical, and so it'll tend to make those spherical. And there is a certain size limit at which that begins to happen. And an exact number we could get to you on the next time.
Yeah.
Sounds
And
good.
this is when the idea of dwarf planets became popular,
Right.
and that's when Pluto got demoted to dwarf
Hmm.
planet status. And
Ah.
It was in between. See, the other thing about a planet,
Mhm.
what defines a planet, real quick, is its ability to be dominant in its orbit. Whatever's around it, it dominates
Oh,
gravitationally. Okay. Well,
makes sense.
Ceres doesn't dominate the asteroid belt. Pluto doesn't dominate its orbit. Okay. So they're a cross between an asteroid and a planet. So that's where the concept of the dwarf planet actually came from. Something
we
in
are
between.
out of time.
And we are, yes. I'm aware.
Very cool, guys. Thanks so much.
Well, hey,
Sure.
folks, thank you for listening in on us crazies on SkyTour Radio tonight. And I'll give you more updates on SkyTour live stream as well. And I'll do a stream talking about everything going on with the telescope. But good night, Tara. Thank you so much. And thank you,
Thank
Daryl,
you.
for all of
Sure.
your tremendous information. And we will talk to you next time.
Take care, everyone.